Sunlight burned through the streets of the small town, catching the dust in golden streaks that made everything seem both ordinary and fragile. The roar of motorcycles echoed down the main road, a steady pulse that promised power and, strangely, protection. A little girl, no more than 7, stumbled into the path of the Hells Angels chapter parked outside the diner, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked cheeks. "They are hurting my mama. Please. Please help," she cried, her tiny hands clutching at the nearest biker's vest. Her voice cracked with fear and desperation, carrying over the rumble of idling engines and the distant chatter of the townspeople. Stonehand, the leader, froze mid-breath, instinct taking over. His eyes scanned the street. Across the block, a scene unfolded that made his jaw tighten. A man, face red with anger, raised his fists over a woman who crumpled against the wall, her clothes torn and her cries barely audible. Razor's hands went to his hips, fingers brushing the handles of the bikes like a warning signal. Tank shifted his weight, scanning the street for witnesses or obstacles. Every muscle in the bikers' bodies tensed. They didn't speak, they didn't need to. The girl's words alone had lit a fire that demanded action. Stonehand knelt slightly, bringing his massive face closer to the child's eye level. "Hey, kid, stay right here. You're safe now. We'll handle this," he said gently, his voice calm but infused with absolute authority. The girl nodded, trembling violently. "Please, don't let them hurt her anymore." Without a word, the bikers kicked their engines to life. The growl of the Harleys was a rolling thunder that filled the street, drowning out the distant murmurs of curious onlookers. They moved in formation, each rider precise, practiced, an unstoppable force of loyalty, courage, and justice in motion. As they approached the scene, the man's anger shifted into shock. Who are you?" he shouted, but no one answered. The biker's presence alone spoke louder than words. Consequences. Accountability. Retribution. Stonehand dismounted and moved forward, every step deliberate. "Back off," he said simply, the weight behind the words pressing down on the aggressor. The crowd that had started to gather held their breath, sensing the gravity of the confrontation. The man hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes as he recognized the unmistakable aura of the Hells Angels. He had no clue what force he had just provoked, and no one would let him forget it. The little girl hid behind Stonehand's legs, her sobs slowly quieting. She couldn't see what would happen next, but she felt, instinctively, that her mother's tormentors were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. The roar of the Harleys had woken the entire block, the vibrations rattling windows and scattering a few startled pedestrians. Stonehand, Razor, Tank, and the rest of the crew moved with military precision, their black leather and chrome gleaming under the relentless sun. Each biker carried the same unspoken understanding: no one harms the innocent while they are near. The little girl, clutching tightly to Stonehand's vest, whispered, "Please, make it stop." Her voice trembled, but her faith was absolute. She had seen in the bikers something stronger than fear itself. Stonehand's eyes met Razor's. No words were exchanged. They had faced violent men before, but the stakes were different now. This wasn't about a scuffle over territory or pride. It was about protecting a mother from harm and giving a frightened child hope. As they approached the alley where the abuse was happening, the man paused, noticing the bikers converging in unison. He glanced at his hands, red with anger and adrenaline, then at the faces looming down at him. Every one of them was calm, yet radiated an authority that brooked no argument. "You! Step back," Stonehand commanded, voice low, yet every syllable vibrated with unwavering power. The man's bravado wavered. You don't know who you're messing with." Razor chuckled softly, a dangerous sound. "We know exactly who you are. And we know exactly what you've done. Step aside, or face the consequences." The woman scrambled to her feet, dazed and terrified, her hair in disarray. They're going to kill me," she whispered to her daughter, who sobbed quietly behind Stonehand. Tank's presence was steady, his hands unclenching only slightly. "Not today," he said quietly, his words carrying more weight than any punch could. The man raised his fists once more, but the bikers were already in motion. It wasn't chaos, it was controlled precision. Stonehand intercepted him first, moving with a force that stopped the man in his tracks without a blow. Razor and Tank flanked him, surrounding the aggressor like a cage of silent, indomitable strength. The man stumbled back, realizing he was outmatched, not just in muscle, but in resolve and loyalty. Stonehand's gaze was unyielding. You've made a choice today. The only question is whether you'll survive it, without losing everything. He dropped his voice, speaking directly to the man's conscience. You hurt the innocent. You terrorized a child. That ends now. The little girl's sobs slowed, her eyes wide as she watched the biker's calm authority turn the air electric. She had never felt so safe, so protected. For her, this wasn't about violence, it was about justice, and she knew instinctively that it would be delivered. The man faltered, a flicker of fear crossing his face. He had underestimated the power of loyalty and courage, the way a group bound by honor could move as one. Slowly, he backed down, the reality of what he faced sinking in. The bikers didn't raise their fists again. They didn't need to. The message had been delivered loud and clear: harm the innocent, and consequences are inevitable. Stonehand extended a hand to the woman, steadying her as she caught her breath. You're safe now, he said softly. Your daughter is safe. That's what matters. The little girl clung to her mother, sobbing into her shoulder. Thank you, she whispered, finally able to release the tension coiling through her small body. Outside, the sun glinted off the chrome of the Harleys, casting long shadows that seemed to wrap the family in a protective glow. For the bikers, this was routine, but for the mother and daughter, it was nothing short of miraculous. Justice had arrived on 4 roaring wheels, and the world suddenly felt like a place where protection and loyalty were real, tangible, and unstoppable. The alley fell silent once the man stumbled away, his threats dissolved into the afternoon air. The mother sank to the curb, trembling, while her daughter clung tightly to her, tears streaming freely but now mixed with relief. The bikers stood around them, silent guardians, their presence a calm yet powerful shield. Sunlight fell across the scene, catching the chrome of the motorcycles and glinting off their leather jackets, turning them into living symbols of protection and unwavering loyalty. Stonehand crouched down to meet the mother's eyes, his expression firm yet compassionate. You're safe now. They won't touch you again. Not while we're around. She blinked, still shaking. I don't know how to thank you. I've never felt safe before. Razor stepped closer, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. You don't need to thank us. You've been through enough. What matters is that you and your daughter get to live without fear. The little girl, still clutching Stonehand's vest, sniffled and looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Will they ever come back? Stonehand shook his head slowly. Not today, not tomorrow. People like that, they learn fast when they're reminded of loyalty and courage. And you, kid, you just saw it in action. Remember it. It's powerful. Tank, always quiet but steady, scanned the surroundings, ensuring there was no lingering threat. Sometimes, it's not about fighting harder. It's about standing together. That's what makes us strong. That's what makes right stronger than wrong. The mother took a shaky breath and hugged her daughter tightly. I don't know what I would have done without you, she whispered, her voice breaking. You don't have to, Carly said softly, kneeling beside them. That's why we ride. That's why we protect. No one should face violence alone, not a child, not a mother, not anyone. Lily's small face brightened slightly. They really helped us. They weren't just scary, they were nice. Stonehand smiled faintly, ruffling the girl's hair gently. Sometimes the people who look the scariest are the ones who care the most. Loyalty looks different than you expect. And courage isn't always loud. It's quiet, steady, and knows when to act. The mother glanced at the bikers, awe and gratitude in her eyes. "I've never seen people like you. Real people who don't ask for anything in return." Razor leaned against a wall, arms crossed. "We don't need thanks. What we need is for you to live, to grow, and to protect each other. That's the point." Sunlight reflected off the chrome bikes outside, spilling like liquid gold over the alley. The mother and daughter took tentative steps forward, finally able to walk away from fear. Behind them, the bikers watched, a living barrier between the world and the danger that had threatened to consume innocence. For the first time, the little girl realized that courage wasn't just for adults, and loyalty wasn't just a word. It was action, unwavering, and visible in the people who had arrived just in time. The weight of fear lifted, replaced by the warmth of protection and the knowledge that, sometimes, justice comes roaring on four wheels, with loyalty leading the way. The mother and daughter walked slowly down the sunlit street, hand in hand, while the bikers followed a few steps behind, forming a protective perimeter without a single word. Every glance from Stonehand, Razor, Tank, and Carly was deliberate, scanning the surroundings for lingering threats, measuring every shadow, every pedestrian. The quiet vigilance was comforting and unnerving at the same time, a reminder that the world was dangerous, but courage and loyalty could meet it head-on. The little girl, clutching her mother's hand, looked up at Stonehand. Why did you help us?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. Stonehand knelt slightly, meeting her gaze. "Because it's the right thing to do. No one should be hurt for being innocent. And because someone has to stand up when others can't." The mother, wiping her eyes, added softly, "You didn't have to risk yourselves, but you did." "Why?" Razor's eyes softened as he looked at her. "It's about loyalty. Once you see someone in need, you don't walk away. You help. That's what family does. That's what community does. That's what keeps people alive." The little girl processed his words, nodding slowly. "Family, like you guys." Stonehand's expression softened. "Exactly. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is the people who show up, who stand beside you when the world tries to tear you down. That's the kind of family we are." The mother looked at her daughter, the weight of the past pressing into her, and whispered, "You see? Courage isn't just fighting. Courage is trusting the right people to protect you." Carly, always attentive, crouched to the little girl's level. "And remember this, kid, strength comes in many forms. Sometimes it's having the guts to ask for help. Sometimes it's staying brave when everything feels scary. And sometimes, it's learning to trust people who have your back." As they walked back toward the diner, the sunlight highlighted every scar, every shadow of the street, painting it in stark contrast between fear and security. Lily realized that the bikers weren't just here to intimidate bullies, they were here to teach lessons in courage, loyalty, and moral strength. Stonehand watched the girl closely, noting the way her eyes brightened with every word. "Life will test you," he said quietly. "People will try to hurt you. But remember, kid, bravery isn't about winning every fight. It's about knowing when to stand tall, when to trust, and when to let loyalty carry you through." The mother squeezed her daughter's hand, gratitude etched into her features. "I've never met people like you," she said, voice full of awe. "People who don't ask for anything, and yet risk everything for someone they barely know." Razor's smile was faint but genuine. "That's how the world should work. If more people stood up for each other, fewer kids and moms would be scared." The little girl, now feeling a mixture of awe and security, whispered, "I want to be brave, like you guys." Stonehand ruffled her hair gently. "You already are. You faced fear, and you stayed. You've trusted us. And that's the first step toward real bravery." The sun poured over the Harleys outside, the chrome reflecting light like guardians standing sentinel over the city. For the first time, the mother and daughter felt truly safe, not just from the man who had harmed them, but from the harshness of the world itself. They had witnessed courage, loyalty, and protection in motion, and it had changed everything. The afternoon sun burned steadily, casting long shadows across the streets as the mother and daughter slowly approached their home. Each step felt lighter now, as if the weight of fear had been lifted from their shoulders. Behind them, the bikers maintained a careful distance, moving as silent sentinels. Their engines rested but remained ready, a latent power that radiated protection without a word being spoken. Lily, the little girl, turned back to Stonehand. "Will they ever come back?" she asked softly, her voice trembling despite her newfound courage. Stonehand shook his head slowly. "Not while we're around. And the lessons you learn today, they're stronger than any threat." Razor added, "People who see loyalty and courage in action, they remember it. That's why the bad guys won't be back. Fear is temporary, loyalty lasts." The mother squeezed her daughter's hand tightly, gratitude etched into every line of her face. "I don't even know how to begin to repay you," she whispered. Carly smiled gently. "You don't have to. That's not why we do this. We stand up because someone has to. Because it's right. And because the people who matter deserve protection." They reached the little house at the end of the street. The mother opened the door and let her daughter inside, taking a deep breath as she turned to face the bikers. "Thank you," she said again, her voice trembling. "You saved our lives." Stonehand nodded, his eyes softening. "Not just today. We're here for every tomorrow, too. You don't have to face this world alone." The mother's eyes filled with tears. I see that now. I see what courage really looks like. It's not about fighting alone. It's about standing with people who care enough to protect you." The little girl waved shyly as the bikers mounted their Harleys. The engines roared to life, a low, steady rumble that vibrated through the street and echoed off the nearby buildings. It was more than sound, it was reassurance, a signal that justice and loyalty had arrived and would not be ignored. Stonehand glanced at the girl, giving a subtle nod. "You're brave. Never forget that." Lily's smile was small but genuine, the kind that comes from witnessing unwavering protection. "I'll remember," she whispered. As the bikers rode off into the glowing sunlight, the mother held her daughter close. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in safety, in justice, and in the rare kind of people who risk everything for strangers. The world outside was still unpredictable, but today had proven that courage, loyalty, and unity could reshape it. Even from a distance, the roar of the Harleys carried a silent message. No child, no mother, and no innocent soul should ever have to face fear alone. And the little girl felt it deep in her heart, the knowledge that some heroes don't wear capes, they ride in black leather and chrome, always ready, always loyal. The evening sun cast long, golden streaks across the town as the mother and daughter settled into their modest home. The air was still, except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. Inside, the mother moved cautiously, checking locks and windows, though a sense of calm had begun to replace the lingering fear that had haunted them for days. Outside, Stonehand, Razor, Tank, and Carly remained nearby, parked in the shadows of the street, their presence invisible yet palpably protective. They didn't need to be seen. Just knowing that loyal guardians were within reach was enough to bring a sense of security that the mother hadn't felt in years. Lily, exhausted from the day's emotional whirlwind, rested against her mother. "Mom, they really cared, didn't they?" she whispered. Her mother nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yes, honey, they really did. People like that, people who fight for the helpless, they're rare. But you saw it today. And you learned something important." Carly stepped inside the doorway, her demeanor soft but serious. "Remember, kid, protection isn't about scaring people away. It's about loyalty. It's about standing together, being ready when danger shows up, and having each other's backs no matter what." Razor leaned against the frame, eyes scanning the street. Sometimes, people don't understand courage until they see it in action. But those who witness it, they carry that lesson with them forever. You just learned that, little one. Stonehand crouched to meet Lily's gaze. "You saw fear today, but you also saw strength. Courage isn't being fearless. It's moving forward even when your heart is pounding and your hands are shaking. And you did that today. The little girl's eyes glistened with newfound understanding. I want to be brave, like you guys. Stonehand smiled faintly. You already are. Today proved it. And the world will test you again, but now you know, loyalty, courage, and kindness have power. Real power. Tank, always vigilant, nodded toward the mother and daughter. You don't have to face danger alone. And if anyone tries, they'll learn what it means to cross people who stand together. That's how justice works. That's how the world should work. The sun dipped lower, bathing the street in a soft, golden glow. The bikers mounted their Harleys and rode off slowly, the engine's rumble fading but leaving an imprint of strength, loyalty, and moral courage. The mother and daughter watched in awe, understanding that protection didn't always need words, only presence, vigilance, and unwavering action. For Lily, the lesson was clear. Bravery is cultivated through experience, trust, and the people who show up when the world turns cruel. She had witnessed real heroes who didn't wear badges or capes, but leather jackets, chrome, and the kind of moral strength that changes lives. As darkness approached, the little girl whispered to her mother, "I'm not scared anymore." Her mother nodded, holding her close. Neither am I. Not while people like them exist. The town slept, unaware of the quiet guardians who had rewritten the rules of protection and courage that afternoon. But for one mother and daughter, the world felt safer, brighter, and filled with hope. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the little home, painting the walls in warm golden light. Lily sat at the kitchen table, tracing the lines of her mother's hand with her small fingers. There was a calm in the room that hadn't been there before, a quiet sense of safety and reassurance. The scars of yesterday's terror still lingered, but they were fading under the presence of hope and protection. The mother poured a cup of coffee and glanced out the window. Across the street, parked neatly in a line, the Harleys glinted in the morning sun. Stonehand, Razor, Tank, and Carly were already there, leaning against their bikes, watching over them with the silent vigilance of people who had devoted themselves to justice in the form of loyalty and courage. Lily's small voice broke the quiet. "Mom, they really are our heroes, aren't they?" Her mother nodded, tears welling but a smile breaking through. "Yes, honey. Heroes who showed us that courage isn't about fighting alone. It's about having people who will stand by you, no matter what." Stonehand approached the doorway, kneeling slightly to meet Lily's eyes. "You've learned something powerful," he said. "Fear will always exist, but courage grows when you trust the right people and act when it counts. You're braver than you think, kid." Carly added softly, "And never forget, kindness and loyalty are stronger than any threat. Protect the ones you love, and stand up for the helpless. That's the way the world should be." Razor and Tank nodded in silent agreement. Their presence, quiet yet commanding, left an imprint of safety and moral strength that the mother and daughter would never forget. As the bikers mounted their Harleys and roared down the sunlit street, leaving the mother and daughter waving, Lily whispered, "I want to be like them when I grow up." Her mother smiled and held her close. "You already have the heart of one. Courage, loyalty, and kindness, they live inside you now. Always." The sun reflected off the chrome bikes one last time before they disappeared down the street, a living reminder that justice, protection, and courage often come in the most unexpected forms. True courage isn't about fighting alone. It's about standing with those who care. Loyalty can transform fear into safety and vulnerability into strength. Kindness and vigilance, even in small acts, ripple outward to protect and inspire. Bravery grows when we trust the right people and act when it matters most. And sometimes, the world's greatest heroes arrive not in capes, but in leather and chrome.